This video is going to get a lot of hate. Um, this is going to be a kind of a long video. So there's this YouTuber named SPYWARE who used to make Linux videos, but he stopped making videos around a year ago, as you could see here. He made this video called Linux Does What Win Don't. And I don't like these series of videos because there's 3 of them. Why? Well, it's pretty much too good to be true for a new user. It makes Linux sound too good to be true. And most of these things don't really most of these things aren't really completely true. Like, most of them are true, but not 100% true, more like 50% true. So I'm gonna be going through these 3 videos in this video and showing off, basically debunking everything. So yeah, this is gonna be a very controversial video. I understand that. So yeah.
My name is SPYWARE, and I'm a former Windows power user. I have used Microsoft products since the DOS 20th. While I was considering on my what
Oh god, that noise is ear piercing.
Alright, the number one thing that brought me to Linux was viruses. Let's face it. Viruses are way out of hand in Windows. There are over 1 million of them, and new ones are released into the wild every day. Viruses and worms there are on Linux combined, and counted only 47 of them. Combined!
Okay, while Linux is more secure than Windows, it actually is a lot more secure than Windows. If you have Wine installed, you can still get any Windows virus. And one thing is, the last point he brings up is gaming and how easy it is to game on Linux. And it says that if your game can't run on Windows, it could probably run with Wine. If you install Wine, then it makes your system a lot more vulnerable to viruses. So this isn't exactly true if you have Wine installed. And if you use a distro like Zorin OS, which pre-installs Wine, it's not as secure as normal Linux. So if you have Wine, it makes it more prone to viruses. So let's get on to his next point.
Distribution called Mint. I burned the image to a CD, booted my computer from it, and was pleased to see that all of my hardware was working in Linux, and I did not even install it yet.
Okay, so for drivers, while this is mostly true, there are a couple exceptions. For example, printer drivers are non-existent on Linux. Well, not 100%. It's just really hard to get printers running. While progress has been made, printer support is a nightmare on Linux. And the other exception is any distro that isn't based on Arch, Debian, or Solus, I can't get my Wi-Fi card working on. Can't get it running on OpenSUSE, Fedora, just any distro that isn't Debian, Solus, or Arch. I can't get my Wi-Fi card running. So that is obviously a driver issue with Linux. Now, this point is true for most distros, but not all distros. So, yeah. Let's go to the next point here. So next point. By the way, I just want to say this is fair use, so don't try and strike me, SPYWARE. Anyway, stability.
I could press Ctrl-Alt-Delete to run the task stability stations every day. One of my biggest pet peeves with Windows was stability. Sure, if a program crashed, I could press Ctrl-Alt-Delete to run the task manager and attempt to stop the program, but that did not always work. Sometimes I had to reboot the computer.
So, he's basically saying that on Linux you don't have to reboot as often. Here's the thing though. While Debian and Solus are very stable, other distros that aren't made for the new users, such as Arch and Fedora, those can be really buggy. And another thing, and he's like, I can run updates without needing to reboot. Kernel updates and stuff don't take effect until you reboot. So you can't do kernel updates until you reboot. They don't take effect. Well, you can upgrade it, but they don't take effect until after you reboot.
You hear me say this update. Sonic serves up without really...
Okay, so his point being free as in freedom. I don't have a comment for that. That's 100% true that Linux is free as in freedom. However, some distros like SteamOS aren't exactly completely open source. They have closed source elements. But other than that, this guy's right about open source. Now for updates. One second.
We all know how good Windows Update is. It only updates Windows. Maybe it may have a few driver updates in its stores, but will it update your video games, your Firefox browser, your QuickTime viewer, your Adobe products? Heck no.
While I agree with him on that first part, the thing is, one thing he didn't mention, this would be good for a new Linux user, is any rolling release distro, when you update it, it can break your system. This has happened to me with Antargos, Manjaro, and Solus. And it has happened to me with Arch Linux a couple of times, but I know how to fix it, luckily. So, if it's a rolling release distro, it can break your system. And on some distros, updates might mess up your system. He forgot to mention that. I'll admit, though, I have had updates that have broken my Windows 10 installation also. For example, the update for Spectre bricked my computer. Spectre and what's that other one? Meltdown. That update broke my computer, and I had to reinstall Windows. But if you're on a rolling release distro, it's pretty often where updates have broken my system. So keep that in mind. So yeah, like I said, I don't hate Linux. I run Arch Linux as my main distro. It's just this guy's making Linux seem too good to be true. So yeah. Okay, so now for software.
Tell it to do so. Most Linux distributions have a comprehensive set of applications pre-installed, but there are instances when you need programs that you cannot live without. Most Linux distributions have a software center where you can easily find free applications listed in categories.
Okay, so while he is right about software centers, those can be useful. Windows has more software. Period. Some people can't use Linux because a piece of software they need for their job can't run on Linux. While there is Wine and VirtualBox, Wine pretty much can't run anything released after 2011, and VirtualBox is very slow and it's irritating to to open a VM and boot Windows just to use one application. Okay, next point, Spatry. Desktops, no comment. This is 100% true.
Capture of my
Let's see. Speed.
workflow. As a software guru, I like to install and uninstall apps on a regular basis. What can I say? I'm a sucker for new software. But another thing that really bugged me about Windows was it would get bloated and bogged down, even with regular maintenance.
While this is true, he mostly talks about software, and you don't have to defragment your system on Linux because of the file system. Speed. Some desktop environments, such as GNOME, are even slower than Windows for me on my laptop. Not my laptop now, but I used to have a Dell XPS 13. Windows ran faster on that laptop than GNOME 3 did and a couple other, and Pantheon did. Those two desktops did not run on that system, period. Windows ran better on that system. So, him saying that Linux is all fast and might be able to revive an old computer or something isn't true on every desktop. Yeah, it is true on LXDE and XFCE and just most desktops, KDE. Well, KDE is kind of heavy, but it's still not 100% true for every desktop. And he's saying that Linux in general is super fast. Oh man, this video is going to get a lot of hate. Okay, Linux works.
More and more hardware power as
Linux works great on legacy hardware. This is not true for GNOME desktops. If you use Lubuntu or Xubuntu or Budgie or something, it will run better. it's pretty much guaranteed it will run better. But if you use something like GNOME 3, that is not going to run on a Pentium 2. Like I said, Lubuntu might, but not GNOME 3. It depends on the desktop. So yeah, you have to get the right distro for that. Well, I guess the right desktop. Right distro and desktop. Okay.
Specifically designed to breathe new life into that machine you have collecting dust in the attic. Thanks to game companies like the Humble Bundle, Dezora, and Steam, Linux supports more games than ever.
Okay, so this is true. However, gaming on Windows, I'll admit, is a lot better. For example, games made to run on DirectX, sometimes their Linux ports don't run as well because they rely too much on DirectX, which Linux doesn't have. So while it can run on Linux, some games that rely a lot on DirectX might run a little bit slower. However, games that were built with OpenGL or Vulkan, like Doom for example, run great on Linux, actually run better on Linux. As for Wine, he mentions you can use Wine to run Windows games. Like I said earlier, I cannot get any application that released after 2011 running in Wine, and that includes games. I can get Geometry Dash running. That's the only game after 2012 I can get running. However, I'll admit, Wine is useful for playing older games like Unreal Tournament 2004. Yeah. And then his last point was if it doesn't run in Wine, if it's a finicky application, just because it can't run in Wine, it doesn't make it finicky. Pretty much most applications released after 2011 cannot run on Wine. I'm just going to say, so that doesn't make it finicky. Sorry to point that out. I had to. Then for VirtualBox, VirtualBox significantly slow down your games. And it takes forever to boot. So if you want to play a Windows game, you have to boot your virtual machine just to play the game. And then it slows your game down by a lot. So let's get to the next SPYWARE video. That was the first one. Where's the second one? Okay, sorry about that. I was able to get the second one. I don't know why that was broken, but whatever.
Around this time,
Let's see his points for this one.
and
Okay, Pop Linux. Boot from USB when hardware does not support it. Okay, wow, Pop Linux is cool. This isn't Linux in general. This is pointed to a specific distro, in my opinion. That just helps you do stuff better. It helps you boot off of USBs on hardware that doesn't support it using a CD. While that's cool and all, that has nothing to do with Linux in general. It's just a useful tool if you want to fix your computer or something. Okay, what's his next point? So, yeah, that's not Linux in general. While you can use a Ubuntu Live CD, he's talking about Linux as a whole in his video, not just one distro. Okay. Move HHD with OS installed to new machine and run it without reinstallation. Okay, that's true, although sometimes you might have driver issues.
Windows is not portable.
Take your settings or OS wherever you go. This seems to be the same thing. Yeah, you can take your OS anywhere using a USB drive and put it on your front system. And, he just did the same thing twice, basically. Although that is a cool feature. Legally build your own version of Linux. No comment on that. That's also a cool feature. Although the average consumer switching from Windows might not know how to do that. That's kind of hard to do. Let's see what else. Especially on non-Debian or Arch distros. Quit worrying about expiration dates. So on this, he talks about how Windows XP became unsupported and how you can't use Windows XP anymore. However, Linux is the same way on some distros. The stable distros that a new user would want, like Ubuntu and Debian, those all have end of support eventually. Wow. I'll commit distros like Arch and Solus. Those are rolling release distros. However, rolling release distros, a lot of the time updates can break it. And also most rolling release distros, with an exception of Solus, aren't made for new users, which seems to be where this video is targeting.
Windows XP has remained
One second.
since.
Okay, more drive format options. While this is true, really the only two file systems people install Linux on are ext3 and ext4. I've never installed Linux on a file system that isn't ext. So, while that is true, there's not really a point in doing that. Install 20 programs with just one command. You can do this too on Windows with Chocolatey, and he says that you have to restart with every application. That's simply not true. Most applications you can install without restarting on Windows. And if he says that you have to reboot before installing anything else, you could just even if you need to restart after installing every program, you could just install every program but not use the program and then reboot when you're done. Just gonna say, while you don't have to reboot when you install stuff on Linux unless it's like something to do with the kernel, you still there's still ways you can do that on Windows using Chocolatey. Browse the web while the OS is being installed. This only works if you click the Try Ubuntu option when you first start Ubuntu, for example, because it asks if you'd like to try or install. And a new user would click install because they wouldn't know to click try, in my opinion, unless they watch like a tutorial. So while this is true, it doesn't work on every distro. Like, you can't do this on like Android x86 or Gentoo or Arch. And two, you can't really. You have to, on some distros like Ubuntu, you have to click a button to try it and then install it while you're trying it for this to work. Although that is a cool feature. No comment on this because this is true. Enjoy full control without hidden backdoor. Actually, that's true. However, some distros are starting to add spying. Yeah, like Ubuntu and Linux Mint. Do the unthinkable. Multiple users. Well, while you can't have multiple users, all of them have to be logged in through SSH. So, yeah, you can use multiple users on one computer. It's just only one user gets a GUI. And even only one user gets a GUI if you're using the same computer. All of the other users are using a different computer to connect to the local machine using SSH. Yeah. Many software versions. Well, that's true, except it could cause dependency issues. He mentions how you can install something with Internet Explorer 7, 8, and 9 and test to make sure all three of them, your website shows the same way. Except that's using Wine. That's kind of different because each Wine hard drive each version of Wine has like a different directory or whatever. I can't remember what it's called off the top of my head, but they use different folders, so that's more doable. However, you can use multiple software versions using something like a Flatpak. Not every package manager supports it, though. Okay, looks like we're going to go to the third episode, and the fourth episode's 30 minutes long, and I haven't seen it yet. I didn't even know this existed, so we're just going to do the first three.
All right.
Maybe I'll make a second video for the fourth one.
A while since I've covered this topic. And Linux that this there thing.
Okay, no mandatory updates. That's true. That's actually useful. However, Solus has there's some updates that are mandatory on Solus. Like when you try and install a new application, they install with the application. Just gonna point that out. If you're using Solus. No spyware / dialing home. Wow, this was true when the video came out. Ubuntu Mate and Ubuntu now have track user data to get information about who's using the distro. Wow, it's not that bad. It's still a thing. And also, PopCon is a thing. So Debian and Ubuntu have PopCon. And we all know the controversy where Deepend was spying for a while. While they stopped spying, it was a tracker on the App Store. While they stopped doing that, they still did it for around a month. So, yeah. Let's see. Supports more processor types.
Thanks.
That's true, actually. Runs until the hardware fails. One thing this guy forgot to mention is while this is true, there also can be errors like kernel panics. Other than that, he's right about that. Let's see. Know your machine inside and out. He said this pretty much in the last episode where he said no backdoor no backdoors. You're in control of your PC. He said that in the last one basically. For make anything executable, that is true. Fix your computer from a live CD. He pretty much mentioned that in the last video with Plop Linux. However, this is true still. This video seems to have the most truth to it. Run legacy software. So he talks about how you can easily run legacy Windows software and you don't have to buy a new version of an application whenever a new version of Windows comes out. Well, two things. One, with Wine, it seems like you can only run legacy software with Wine. You can't run any new software because it uses like Windows libraries. And two, I haven't had a problem with that. My friend has Microsoft Word 2007 and it runs on Windows 10 like a charm. And also I've ran old versions of Adobe Photoshop that on Windows 10. So Windows 10 can run some legacy software. It's just kind of hard to set up. Just have to know how to set it up to work. Okay, what's next? Delete any file even if it's in use. That's true, however, it can cause issues. For example, if, you can remove Firefox while you use it, and because it's loaded up in memory. However, Firefox starts becoming very unstable if you delete it. And for example, you can't open new tabs. Share home with multiple distributions. Yeah, that's true if you set it up on an external hard drive or something, but it's kind of hard to set up and you have to really know what you're doing. So, yeah, thanks for watching this video. I might make a part 2 to this for Linux does what Win don't part 4. But yeah, I just feel like this guy was making Linux sound way too good to be true, and then new users would switch to Linux and realize that stuff that he said either wasn't exactly true or wasn't as they pictured it or whatever, something like that. So yeah, anyways, thanks for watching this video. I know this video is going to get a lot of dislikes, so it's probably going to become one of my most disliked videos. So please hit that like button to help combat the dislikes. If you like this video, you can like it. If you don't like this video, don't like my points or anything, you can dislike it if you want. If you want to support me, you can subscribe, and the links to donate to me are in the description. So yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.